deliberate rejection of knowledge and logic in Christianity, and for some reason, Christians look at it as a good thing. Now, I'm not saying that everything has to make sense. There's some shit that's just unexplainable. But when nothing makes sense, that's when the eyebrows get raised. Nothing in this bitch adds up. Nothing. Not one verse. If in order to understand God, I have to reject logic, one, why do I have it? Why would he even give me logic and understanding to begin? Why would he even give me a brain to begin with if I'm not supposed to understand anything? Kind of like the whole free will thing, giving us shit that he doesn't want us to use. And two, why would a rejection of knowledge be seen as a bad thing? Christians themselves confirm that they reject knowledge. The book of Genesis completely highlights that. Genesis chapter 3, with the story of Adam and Eve, the story of the original sin. The tree that they were not supposed to eat from was the tree of knowledge, not the tree of death, not the tree of sin, not the tree of evil, not the tree of Satan, the tree of knowledge, the tree that would give them understanding of good and evil, the tree that would actually put them on the same level of understanding as God himself, which God himself admits in Genesis 3:22. Behold, the man is become as one of us to know good and evil. It's really funny that in the beginning of that story, he tells them not to eat the fruit because they'll die. And then they eat the fruit and A, they don't die, and B, he never mentions this so-called death again. The only thing he's concerned about was the fact that they disobeyed him and the fact that now they'd be on the same level of understanding as him. God himself knows that if we get knowledge, that's a bad thing for him. The thing that I want to understand is, what was the purpose of the tree? If they weren't supposed to eat it, why was it in the garden? Was that the tree that God would eat from, and that's how he got his knowledge because he didn't have knowledge before? Or maybe God put the tree there for the sole purpose of tempting Adam and Eve. And if that's the case, you can see now why people don't want to follow your fuck-ass religion. Your God kind of sucks. Or maybe the fruit was for the other gods that just so happened to be in the Garden of Eden. You know, the other gods that God himself refers to in Genesis 3:22 when he says one of us. Granted, Christians like to argue that he's talking about the Holy Trinity, like Jesus and the Holy Spirit were up there. But if God is referring to the Holy Trinity in this verse, I have a lot of other questions. Were they all created at the same time? Did God create them? And if that's the case, then does that mean that God created himself? And if they're all the same, then why then, a couple thousand years later, it is Jesus in the garden right before he's about to be crucified, praying to God, basically saying, hey, can we not do this? If they're the same person, they should be able to come to an agreement on whether or not they're going to do it or not. And they shouldn't have to tell themselves what they don't want to do to themselves. I can see now why y'all don't like logic. Logic makes y'all look bad.
And y'all know I love her page, The Devil's Daughter 162. And I am working to get her on one of our lives real soon here. I'm not going to repeat many of the things that she said, but she makes an incredibly valid point of how this book asks you to get rid of your logic. Don't analyze the book. This God gave you a brain that is an analytical brain, but yet doesn't want you to use it when you're looking at this book. Then it further contradicts itself by telling you to gain knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Why would you tell a being to gain knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, yet you don't want that being to use the knowledge and wisdom and understanding that it is able to acquire to debunk the hell out of this book? Why would it tell you and demonstrate that this book can only be the time frame of Adam, go back to the 6,637 plus years ago, but yet leave archaeological evidence all around the world that demonstrates that the planet has been around a hell of a lot longer? And even in Peter, because I know somebody's going to say it in First Peter, where you're talking about one day to God is like 1,000 years to man. First of all, it says is like, not is like. Doesn't mean that is something that you should take as literal, but something that is more metaphoric. But you Christians take that literally. If one day is 1,000 years to man, then that means that the 6 days of creation are only 6,000 additional years. So even if I gave you that, that would still only put you back to about 11,000 years ago, which happens to be around the time frame of the Younger Dryas flood. But we have evidence to show that human civilizations have been around longer than 11,000 years ago. Hell, Göbekli Tepe is already showing to be 10,000, 11,000 years ago. But Taran Tepe is showing that we've had that civilization in around 12,000, 13,000 years ago. The Sphinx is at least 26,000 years old. The Adam's calendar down in southern Africa is over 100,000 years old. So the planet demonstrates this that human civilization has been around much longer than this Bible, but yet you want me to suspend that logic and knowledge in order to believe your book. You want me to suspend the logic and knowledge that there were people around before, during, and after the flood, that it is impossibility for Noah and his three sons to have then repopulated a planet that already had people living in the Americas, living in Asia, living in Africa, living in Europe, living in the Levant. People were already living there before, during, and after this flood, all throughout the Mediterranean. But yet you want me to suspend that logic and only accept your biblical logic. You want me to believe that there was this United Kingdom of Israel under David, but yet there is absolutely no archaeological evidence that demonstrates that the entire area of Israel was ever one nation. Was there a King David? The Teldar Stele demonstrates that there possibly could have been a David, more than likely was a David, but that David did not have a nation to the size to which this Bible would want you to believe that they had this nation. This Bible also wants me to believe that after the flood, all the Nephilim were dead, but yet then later on demonstrate that Nephilim were around, and then have you to make up some bullshit about a second incursion, or that the Nephilim gene was in the bloodline of the daughters of those kids who were married to Noah's kids. This Bible makes absolutely no sense. It wants me to believe that the Exodus story happened when there's no evidence of an Exodus story. It wants me to believe that they went around and destroyed over 300 cities during this time frame that they wandered around, but the time frame doesn't match the time frame of Ramses. It would only have given them 3 years to do this, and that is an impossibility. Did not work, does not work, did not happen. So yes, asking us to suspend our knowledge, our logic, yet telling us to gain knowledge, to gain understanding and wisdom, is a contradiction within itself, and is one of the reasons why we walk away from this book. There is absolutely no proof of this miracle-making Jesus, but you want us to believe in this Jesus. There's no proof of these apostles, but you want us to believe in these apostles. All these writings were written second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh hand, and you want us to believe that this is eyewitness accounts, that people didn't even have actual documentation to demonstrate that it was eyewitness accounts, when we have evidence that actually demonstrate that these writings were more than likely anonymously written by Philo of Alexander, Josephus, Ben Matthea, and possibly the Herod, grandson of Herod the Great, which of course they would write it anonymously, because why would the Jewish people accept writings of a new God that was written by Hellenistic Jews who were for the Roman government, when Rome was trying to create a religion that would be a docile version of Judaism? You want us to believe this, but there's too much evidence to demonstrate that these stories are nothing more than lies. These stories are nothing more than political tools to control the people. Y'all go follow The Devil's Daughter 162. Continue to follow and share these videos. I greatly appreciate it. But y'all have a great day. And remember always, you got to free yourself to be yourself. Because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.